Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor of Ultiworld, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Ultiworld senior editor Keith Raynor. Keith, what's going on? There's a couple of pieces of news from other sports that I wanted to bring up and throw at you, and then we can talk about how maybe it would relate to Ultimate.
All right.
First of all, you've probably heard Major League Baseball and the Players Union did not come to a new agreement on a collective bargaining agreement. So the start of the season we've already had some games get canceled. They're not going to be starting at the end of March as scheduled. And basically the owners seemed like they leaked to the press that they were getting close to a deal to try to apply pressure to the Players Union. And they gave their best and final offer. And the players were like, this does not reach the terms that we've been discussing. And so back to the drawing board, and the two sides are still kind of far apart. First of all, I mean, I know you're not especially a big baseball fan, but it just made me think about, what if players in the AUDL were like, we're not playing unless, we get X, Y, and Z.
League folds immediately. There's so little to go around. I mean, you think about lockout history in baseball, strike history. When major professional sports have lockouts or strikes, it's L's all around. You know what I mean? Like, fans hate it. Fans never side with any party, really. They mostly just get mad that millionaires are being given less millions by billionaires. You know what I mean? Like, that the millionaires and billionaires are fighting. Like, no one likes that. It's bad optics. Now, that would not be the case in AUDL, where there's, 6 millionaires, maybe? Do you think that's fair? Do you think there are 6 people who are millionaires in the AUDL? MKBHD is probably a millionaire, right?
It could be more than that. I think that there's some chunk of the owners are millionaires. Now, when I say millionaires, maybe they have $1 million.
Right, exactly.
Right. Their net worth is $1 million. But, I think the fact that people are willing to potentially lose tens of thousands of dollars a year right now means that they have to have some kind of capital.
My point being, though, that if the players held out, they have to organize for one, but if they were and they were to hold out, and this is true for all of the leagues, maybe the least of so for the AUDL because they have the most resources, but there's just not much to haggle over. There's a lot of wiggle room, I don't think.
Here's what annoys me about the baseball thing, because I was reading about it in the Wall Street Journal today. The terms on which they are apart, we're talking about a few $1 million here or there. I'm like, why are the owners fighting so hard not to put an extra, let's say, $40 million into this, salary pool or whatever? $40 million. It's such a trivial amount of money in the grand scheme of how much money baseball brings in. It just feels greedy. And so I actually think the players are totally in the right here. The owners have been unwilling to budge, and we'll see what happens now, because now the players are going to feel the pinch because they don't get paid for the games that don't get played.
Indeed. And baseball fans will be the ones that suffer. Not great, Bob. What else you got? What other sports?
This other one is actually even potentially more relevant to semi-professional ultimate frisbee. Did you see this? In the WNBA, my hometown New York Liberty were fined $500,000 because they were chartering flights for their players to go to games. And that's against the collective bargaining agreement in the WNBA. You're not allowed to charter flights for players because it's seen as a form of unfair advantage to have players be able to fly, on a chartered aircraft instead of commercial.
I have flown commercial with WNBA players. Back from an ultimate tournament, if I'm not mistaken. So I've seen them on the plane.
So obviously the WNBA is still orders of magnitude bigger than the AUDL or any of our semi-pro ultimate leagues, but this does feel like sort of a relevant issue. What do you do when you have a franchise that's willing to pay a lot more for its players than another franchise? When you have the ability to make trades and to sign free agents, all of a sudden that becomes much more relevant than in the AUDL, where like, no one is being moved from city to city to play.
Are you not going to bring up the chartered flight from last season in the AUDL?
Well, we had the charter flight. We had the charter flight from Dallas.
Okay.
We have some franchises like
leave this for me to pick up.
Like here in New York, where players are compensated in some cases much higher than other places. So does this become an issue in the AUDL when you have certain franchises that are able to sign way more important players because they're willing to pay a bunch more? Or is that just how it works in pro sports?
It's hard to imagine. Like, let's say hypothetically that an owner wants to come in and shower money on their team. Like, how is the AUDL going to who like would love to have a financially lucrative owner join the organization to put money behind Ultimate? How are they going to tell that person no? They're in a tough position at that point to argue with them, even though it may have competitive ramifications for the league. And I think the ownership structures of the PUL and the Western Ultimate League make this less likely to be a problem there. But you could see the same thing. If somebody with a lot of money, which can turn into influence, joins the organization, but wants to use that money to further their own competitive advantage, like how do you balance that when those resources are useful?
Right. I mean, I don't think it would be smart for the AUDL to turn down a situation like that. I think the goal is for the league to try to push for more, even if it comes at the cost of maybe a team being too strong relative to other teams. But, right now, so much of it's dependent on just who lives in the city that's not as much of a concern.
I do think there would be some ultimate
the WNBA for the decision.
There would be some ultimate backlash too, like there has been against the WNBA on social media. There would be some backlash if somebody was lavishly spending on AUDL players. I mean, it's very easy to see the social media commentary on how that would be wasteful spending to places that don't need it when there are plenty of places that do need the further investment. And, people have been pretty, I think just reading the headline, which is how I saw this. I didn't actually read the article because I figured it was not that serious, but a lot of people were up in arms. So how can you tax one of your organizations for trying to be professional, for, trying to have what other leagues have? And when you think about it in the form of, well, not every team has access to this and you're supposed to have a level playing field, then maybe it's not so harmful.
I saw a story, and I would admit that I have not looked into this in a deep way, but I saw some, as a sidebar to this story, that a team, maybe the Liberty, maybe somebody else, had found a way to get chartered flights for the entire league for 3 years for free. I don't know how that happened, but somebody
can they send us an email? Can they hook us up?
Yeah. And they turned it down because the league thought like, well, what happens after 3 seasons? We can't afford that. So people are killing the WNBA right now. Collective bargaining agreements, they're tricky.
Yeah.
The last Major League Baseball one screwed the players really bad, and they realized it about a year in, and now that they've sort of been resentful coming up into this negotiation. So at some point we're going to get collectively bargained AUDL teams.
You have to think so. I don't know how far away we are from that. It feels like we're a pretty good distance because there's just not enough money to make it worth the time, I think. But down the line, like it certainly seems like an organization that'll be friendly to like labor relations, and certainly the community will be.
All right, let's get into the meat of this show. A little bit later on, we're going to be talking to the 2021 Callahan winner, Azeez Adeyemi, who will join us here on the show. Looking forward to talking with Azeez and talking to him about winning a title with Brown and getting close again this past fall. Before we get to that, we're going to recap Commonwealth Cup. We're also going to talk about a new WFDF ruling as it relates to Russia. But first, college bid allocation has been determined. USA Ultimate announcing last week the 2022 college guidelines that details how, the full procedures for the college series and bid allocations. Key thing to know is, and what everybody was waiting to see, how are nationals bids being determined and given out to each region? So here's what they landed on, Keith. For D1, there will be 10 automatic bids per usual, 1 to every region. There will be 5 size bids given to the 5 biggest regions based on the number of teams that sign up for conferences. Then there will be 2 bids. Well, I'm going to give you the 3 bids and then the 2 bids. 3 bids are strength bids based on a weighted average of the bids allocated in 2019 and 2018. And that's a 75-25 split between those 2 years. And the final 2 bids are based on the highest finishing teams at 2021 Nationals once you exclude the regions that earned strength bids and you take out the top team from every region based on the automatic qualifiers. Mm-hmm. So basically, once you take out all the best teams and then you take out any teams that got any regions that got a strength bid, take out their second team, then the top 2 teams, each of their regions gets a bid. So what does it all mean? Well, we actually already know most of the bids except for the size bids. So here they are. I'll give them to you quickly. Atlantic Coast, 2 men's, 2 women's. Great Lakes, 1-1. Metro East, 1-1. New England, 2-2. North Central, 2 men's, 1 women's. Northwest, 2-2. Ohio Valley, 1-1. South Central, 2 men's, 1 women's. Southeast, 1-1. And Southwest, 1 men's and 3 women's. And again, there's still 5 bids yet to be allocated based on size. So, Keith, what do you think?
This is not too far off from some of the ideas that we discussed, kind of like a hybrid system, looking to find different ways to reasonably allocate bids based on potentially like recent regional competitive strength, but you don't want to dig too far into the archives because 2018 and 2019 teams are not super relevant to potentially the 2022 teams. Size bids, something that encourages participation, those sorts of things, and then the auto bid system. So this is not exactly what I would have predicted. It is way more complex than I would have ever expected in this situation. But I'm not necessarily against it given their options, which were not great. Now it is limiting. You basically can't end up with what's the max, 4, and it's extremely unlikely, or maybe it's 3. That's the max.
I think you could still end up with 4.
You could end up with 4.
Southwest women could get 4, and they probably will.
They right. If I had to think about the size bids, that would be probably like AC, Southwest, Southeast, New England. Those are like the 4 regions that jump out to me as the biggest, like if memory serves. So yeah, I would expect those. Maybe the Northwest is the other one. So those are maybe not. It might vary from division to division, but I'm speculating off memory here. So I do think we'll see some of these 2s become 3s, and once we become 2s, I think the AC is probably in a pretty good position to get to 2. But that's going to be challenging for both of those regions as it has been in the past. Our team's going to be frustrated. I see some teams already voicing frustrations on Twitter. Sure. But you know what? There was never going to be an easy path to nationals for you. So get to work. You know what I mean? I don't have much room for the complaining because it's what else are they going to do?
Yeah. I mean, once they decided not to use this season's results, you kind of have to do something. And I got to be honest, it feels a little bit to me based on the complexity of the design of this, that they tried out a bunch of different options and then tried to pick the one that felt like it was the best lineup with kind of what felt right. I mean, I don't have any inside information about that, but this is similar to what they did with the 2021 college championships bid allocation, where it was size and a combination of past years' strength bids, weighted average, and then auto bids. This time they added in 2021 nationals results, which I think helps to actually tie it a little bit more to more current results, because definitely what happened in 2019 and 2018 does not feel particularly relevant to what we're seeing now, besides the fact that you have the same teams good every year for the most part. At the end of the day, I think there's a bid here, a bid there that maybe feel like it's a little tough. Like certain regions feel like they're going to be a little bit left out.
I thought you were looking at North Central women's getting a 2 to start.
Well, so, yeah, I mean, I think they probably wish they could get 2. New England men only having 2 right now. They probably get to 3, but if they don't, that's going to be tough. I think potentially Southeast only getting 1 is going to be painful. If they don't,
but not uncommon.
True. But, how good is Tulane? Florida's probably a bubble team right now, if you're doing the rankings. But again, with the Southwest women getting 3, that was the one region where you felt like they need to definitely get at least 3, and they're probably going to get 4. So, I think there's probably going to be 1 or 2 teams that get left out that shouldn't, but these are not way off or something like that.
It's hard for them to be way off. I don't think they're going to be real. We might be 1 or 2 spots off, but honestly, we're basically there in most years, right? Like almost every year, there's like 1 or 2 teams that you're like, this region is short on bids for how good the teams are there. So I think that's kind of just par for the course.
In D3, very similar allocation, just scaled down to only having 16 teams. 10 auto bids, 3 size bids, 2 of the weighted average bids, and then 1 2021 Nationals bid. Very few D3 teams have taken the field to this point, so we don't really know too much about how those bids are going to look in terms of strength of each region. But, no surprise to see that pretty much matched up. Notably, regionals finish will also bind seeding this year at Nationals. So a few years ago, they did away with that. You didn't have to match the seeding to the results of regionals where, the team that finished ahead of another team always had to be seeded ahead of them. They got rid of that, but they're bringing it back for this as they did in the fall. So, essentially relying a little bit more on the data from regionals to guide seeding, since they're not using the data from the regular season, although they will use the data from the regular season to inform the seeding, not to do the rankings, but to inform the seeding. So, I don't need to go down that path again.
And I think this is probably, like you mentioned, this is probably a one-off. I don't expect the regional lock to stick. We've seen that cause some real oddities in seeding in years gone by. So
next story here today, the World Flying Disc Federation announced today that the national federations of Russia and Belarus are being suspended, and athletes and officials from those countries are banned from participation in WFDF sanctioned events. So that not just as representatives of Russia and Belarus, but fully barred from competing if, Russian players cannot come to the World Club Championships, for example. Now, neither of these countries is in the World Games, so that won't be affected. But, again, it's until further notice, these suspensions are in place. So, we do not expect then to have Russian teams at WUCC in July and at any of the, the World Juniors coming up. We don't know how long this will last, but this is following in the footsteps of many other international sporting organizations and just international organizations in general, condemning what's going on over in Ukraine. And quote from the WFDF president, Robert Nob Rao, WFDF strongly condemns this unprovoked act of war and calls upon the leadership of Russia to order its military to immediately stand down and withdraw from Ukraine. The flying disc global community and the entire world of sport finds these actions incompatible with human progress and the values of sport. Furthermore, it is a blatant breach by the Russian government of the Olympic Truce Resolution, which was adopted by the UN General Assembly on December 2nd, 2021. Our thoughts are with the people of the Ukraine and particularly of the athletes under our member federation, the WFDF. We stand united in solidarity with them and hope and pray for their safety and security. We are also concerned for our Russian flying disc athletes and so many of the general population of Russia who will be negatively impacted by the consequences resulting from the actions of their leadership. WFDF strongly keeps up our hopes that the conflict can be solved through peaceful means and not by war. So, Keith, we've already seen Russia have its athletes having to compete at the Olympics, not under the Russian flag. Now, that was not related to this Ukraine war situation, but rather to doping that was clearly happening on a wide-scale basis in Russia. But this goes a step further, and we're going to see WFDF completely banning Russian athletes from competing at WFDF tournaments. What are your thoughts on the WFDF decision here?
You mentioned that this was a continuation of what we've seen from the International Olympic Committee and the general sporting world, and that to me is really a continuation of what you're seeing from the global community. You're seeing a lot of people just cutting off associations with Russia, now Belarus as well. Basically, we're just not going to do business with you until this is resolved. And so it's not surprising to me to see these types of extensions happening. I don't even know how logistically challenging it might be to engage with people from Russia at this point in time, whether it's issues with travel or money. You're seeing Russia be carved out of the global economic community in some ways. So these are all efforts to, bring consequences to the actions without having to enter armed conflict. So, I obviously I don't think that that's necessarily WFDF's intention. I don't think they're overstating their own influence here. And the Russian Ultimate Federation, the RFDF, also came out with a statement condemning the violence from Russia towards Ukraine. So we've seen that this is not necessarily the will of the people. Certainly not the people associated with the ultimate community in Russia, but it is kind of the cost of doing business in this situation.
Yeah, and so the International Olympic Committee 2 days ago came out. You can find a statement on Olympics.com, and they said that they recommend that international sports federations, that's WFDF, not invite or allow the participation of Russian and Belarusian athletes and officials in international competitions. That's all you need to know here, to be honest. WFDF is focused on trying to get Ultimate into the 2028 Olympics, and that means that they are going to adhere to what is going on in international sport. I've seen people say, and they're right, that Russian athletes being allowed to compete at WCC or not has absolutely no bearing on the Russian government. That Russian players, of ultimate players, are not approving of this war, and they just want to be able to participate in the ultimate. So what is the point of this? Well, it has nothing to do with that. This is all about the political side of the sports world, and it's sad. I feel terrible for the Russian teams that were probably coming to WUCC and now won't be able to unless this gets resolved soon. But this is, I don't know what else to say. Like, this is every company, every organization is in lockstep on this issue. They're not doing business in Russia, like you said, Keith.
And, Ukrainian Ukrainian teams are also probably not able to participate through no fault of their own. So there are, real costs to what's going on. And it's definitely sad to think about. But this is, to me, a minor inconvenience in the scheme of things. But, I think that it's difficult to see another decision that WFDF can make given the context.
Sure. Let's take a quick look at what happened at the Commonwealth Cup. And remember, you can reach out to us anytime with your thoughts or questions. deeplook@ultiworld.com.
I'll tell you what didn't happen at Commonwealth Cup, Charlie. Anybody coming close to being UNC? Not even within a mile.
What was UNC's closest game?
Closest game was 5, and they had a couple of those.
Yeah, they played Georgia to 15-5 and Pittsburgh to 15-5, who are probably the two best teams at the tournament other than UNC.
Yeah.
This was a good old-fashioned beatdown. Georgia made the final, though, Keith. That's probably the story of this tournament. I mean, we know UNC is great. There's not much else to say. I mean, this shows you how great they are. Marie Perivier back in the lineup. They make it to the final. They get a win over Pittsburgh in the semis, and it was a good one. It was 12-11. Close, very close game, and they end up forfeiting the final because they were short on numbers, and they'd already played UNC earlier in the tournament. So UNC gets the forfeit win, but UNC had beaten Georgia 15-5 on Saturday. So I think we know what would have happened there. And so a nice bounce back for Georgia, who struggled a little bit at QCTU after Perivier went down with an injury.
Marie Perivier is barely worth a lot of points because wow, what a turnaround for Georgia. I don't know if you can win Player of the Year with these kind of, you talk about NBA like on-off splits a lot. Marie Perivier's on-off splits are extremely good. The advanced metrics, gotta love her at this point. So great result for Georgia. So I think they've got to be excited. Some disappointments in the field. I think Pittsburgh would have loved to get that win over Georgia. Nice bounce back for Virginia, but Chicago, they struggled in their first tournament. Ohio, there's after going 0-3 in pool play, I don't think there's any way that they're going to be in our top 25. They went for the over on the weekend, an 0-7 weekend. Tough pill to swallow. So some disappointing performances. Keep your eye on Virginia. We'll see what happens with the AC is bid wise. But Virginia won all their games aside from their 15-4 loss to Georgia. So good weekend for them when we were a little worried about them after Green City tune-up.
Yeah, Michigan was your other semifinalist. They got past Chicago in quarters.
Big win, regional win.
Yeah, and their only losses were to UNC, and then they lost 10-7 to Pittsburgh. So Michigan having a very solid start to the year. Their loss to Ohio back at QCTU looks a little worse in retrospect, but otherwise they've mostly lost to good teams. And they get the bounce back win over Ohio, and they get that win over Chicago as well. So, we'll see what happens with Michigan. They feel like the front runner in Great Lakes, though, for sure.
Certainly a win over a head-to-head over Chicago is going to put you in the driver's seat.
So Keith and I both picked UNC to win. Okay. Not a tough pick this week. Keith had Pittsburgh making the final. Didn't happen. I had Chicago making the final.
I just missed.
Definitely did not happen. They must have lost some real key pieces considering how good they looked at 2021 Nationals. So more to come on that. We'll look ahead to this coming college weekend after the break and after our interview coming up with Azeez Adeyemi, 2021 Callahan winner from Brown. Stay with us. It's Deep Look. Joining us now on Deep Look is the 2021 Callahan Award winner and college champion with Brown University in 2019, Azeez Adeyemi. Azeez, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, we're glad to have you on. Great to be able to catch up with you. First of all, just when you found out that you won the Callahan Award, what was your reaction? I mean, it was kind of a sudden. Happened on Twitter. Yeah. So I'm just curious, where you were, what's your thought process? Your phone blowing up? What was that all like?
Well, my phone was definitely blowing up. I would say it was right after work, was playing FIFA with a couple of friends. And actually a friend of mine, 30 minutes before it released, asked me when is the Callahan Award getting announced? And I'm like, yeah, it'll probably come out in the next week or so. I'll let y'all know. Little do I know, 10 minutes later, the drop happens. It was just honestly my heart started racing. I'm like, what's going on? This can't be real. But it was a really surreal moment. But was really appreciative of everyone who helped me get to that point. And obviously there are so many people, but that was my first thought. Everyone who helped me get there, that award is for them.
Did you actually find out? Like, I remember USA Ultimate had the little graphic where it was like highlighting each of the finalists, and it was like going to stop on one of. Did you find out literally from that graphic, or did you read it somewhere else first?
It was a text message from my friend who had seen the graphic. I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
That would have been a dramatic moment. You're like watching the moment when they're announcing you. But very cool to have the moment of surprise, kind of in some ways.
Yeah.
Were you surprised by this whole process? Some teams that people are aware that they're going to be nominated by their teammates. Some people are surprised when their teammates submit the nomination. Then you become a finalist. Like, how surprised were you throughout this process by all the different components of it?
I think you described it exactly. I basically got a text message from one of the captains. When was this? I don't even remember the exact time. While I was at work in the office, being like, Azeez, you're being nominated for the Callahan. I'm like, huh? What? What do you mean? And then like 20 minutes later, I get a message from Brian, and huge shout out to him because he essentially was the, creator of my Callahan video. And 20 minutes later, he's like, Azeez, I have mock-up one of the Callahan video. And so, the initial process, I was, pretty much shocked, but really thankful for everyone, all my teammates who nominated me internally. And then to become a finalist, that was like another shock, a layer of shock. And then obviously to hear that I was the Callahan winner for 2021, it's just a lot of blessings along the way. Yeah.
What's your ultimate background? Did you play in high school and then, know you wanted to play in college and join up with Brown? I actually don't know much about your playing history. I remember when we first saw you really breaking out as a key defender for the team when you went to the finals in 2019. So what's your background in the sport?
Yeah. So the first time I really picked up a Frisbee was 8th grade. Convinced by my brother because he was making the transition from lacrosse to Frisbee when entering high school. He's like, Azeez, why don't we help each other out? You throw a Frisbee with me and I'll throw and catch with you as well. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? But I'm going to continue down this line of lacrosse. So I continued down that line until junior year, where I was kind of faced with the last opportunity to play a sport with my brother, or at least, a predictable one. He was going off to college, and I had another year in high school. And him and one of my friends, Tyler Letter Plascat, was like, Azeez, try it out. If you really don't like it, go back to lacrosse. And if you love it, we'd love to have you. So I did 2 weeks of preseason and ended up loving it, falling in love. Played in New York, in the New York scene, reached the state championship in my senior year, ended up losing to Bard. And then, didn't really decide I was going to play Frisbee in college until decently late. But I was definitely influenced by Charlie Haltz, known as Bean, who during my alumni game in high school was like, Azeez, we really think that you could be something on our team. And he gave me this alumni disc for Brown, kind of like the first act that BMO did for me. And, kind of the rest is history from there. Tried out with a full arm cast because I had a broken wrist, ended up making the team. And then, I guess the history is known from there.
You could be something is right, huh? I guess he probably didn't know he was signing up for a Callahan to come back to the program. But
yeah.
Now you and Jasmine Childers also won in the women's division, and it's the first time that we've had black winners simultaneously in the same year.
Yeah.
How meaningful is it to you to be the first in that way?
Yeah, it was quite a shock. It was also like being announced in Black History Month. Mm-hmm. It all kind of came together really well. It was, honestly, it's huge for me because I think if you talk to anyone any person of color, any black individual in the game of Frisbee, they recognize that there is a lack of diversity. But that shouldn't be the case, for anyone, but especially for POC, like Frisbee is a space for you, and there is a space for us in the game. And I think this double Callahan Award winning season really shows that, and is emblematic of that.
Another interesting thing, a lot of times the Callahan Award goes to players who are the offensive superstar on their team that throws all the hucks or catches all the goals. We've seen, players like Mac Hecht, just bombing it. You're a defender first. I mean, I think you're obviously still a very skilled offensive player, and you do score a lot of goals, but you're primarily out there on the D line. You're locking down people on defense. Is it cool for you to win as a defender? Like, do you take pride in that? Versus, being somebody who's been groomed to be the O-line handler for 3 years?
I mean, defense is what drew me to the game. That athletic ability mixed with technical skill work of footwork and everything. I take a lot of pride in my defense, as you could probably imagine. I get really passionate about it, and it's something that really fires me up every single day. Being able to guard the next person, and be challenged every single day on the defensive end. It was definitely an interesting thing, being a primarily defensive player and being nominated for Callahan, because for the other Callahan winners, you see them throwing these 90-yard hucks and scoring these amazing goals, and I'm that isn't my game. But I think I really understood my role within the team and how I could improve myself, but then also the larger team. It's being that fire starter, being that person who you can always rely on a defensive play, on a bookends, on just all of the things that really encapsulate the defensive end of Frisbee. Don't get me wrong, I love scoring goals. I really love scoring goals, but defense is my pride. And so for all the defensive players out there, keep working, keep grinding, because I see you.
Now, you mentioned your passion, and I don't think it takes watching you very much to see it when you're on the field. I mean, you bring a ton of energy to the field, a lot of hype, and it's one of the things that I feel like I remember the most about watching you play is how much energy you brought for your team around you. Is that something that has just kind of always been a feature of your game, or was that something you grew into as you became a more confident player?
I think coming in freshman year, I was definitely more heads down. I'll lock up my one defender, and that's kind of my role. But I was really kind of focused within myself initially, being the best individual defender on the field. But as my role grew within the team, it definitely expanded beyond that. How can I help the team play better defense? How can I help all six other guys play defense? Heads up defense, making plays for others, and things like that. It really evolved into a leadership role, where maybe not every single play, but with my actions, with my words, with my fire, being able to motivate the team to be better, and to keep working and to keep grinding.
What was it like to win a national championship? Not a lot of players get that opportunity.
It's honestly just a huge honor. Freshman year was my freshman year, and I guess actually honestly 2020, the Brownie in Motion BMO team kind of had a revolution, where we were we want to be a national caliber team. and what can we do to get there. And so we, grinded really my freshman year to change the way in which we facilitate our team, whether it be practices, workouts, individual training things. And that the fruit of that labor kind of showed in the year 2017, 2018 season, but really showed in the 2018, 2019 season. But I think we still had a lot of fine tuning to do. And then Stanford, was it the finals? I'm forgetting exactly what it is, but it was our game against UNC when we completely got smoked, like obliterated. But we knew that was the caliber team we wanted to be. And we wanted to be at that level. And so like the work ethic that we showed and the work ethic, a lot of the things that, other people don't see, it rose to another level. And so like knowing that how much work we put in to get to that stage, and then being able to kind of reach the top, it felt too sweet. It was too sweet. Yeah. Yeah.
Who's the toughest matchup that you face off with, aside from your teammates in practice?
Well,
and I got to take that away from you before you jump on it.
Let's take that away.
Well, I knew you were gonna ask a question like that, and I was like, all right, I know who my answer is gonna be. Well, I will say before I say my actual answer, my teammates. Just because playing on a national level team, like the players you will see the most, you interact with the most are your teammates, and they're the ones who you face up against every single day. And so, being able to guard, John Randolph on, 100 times in one practice, like that makes you better and that makes you a better player.
Legitimately, like John Randolph is the best. Like most people are like lying when they say it's their teammates, but it actually could be him. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. And so like, yes, definitely my teammates first. And the second thing I'll say is every single matchup that I've guarded, like there was a reason that I was on them. Like these are individuals who are tough to guard, who are, amazing with their feet, deep threats, amazing cutters. And so like just huge respects to all those individuals. But I will say special shout out to Alex Davis. The combination of speed, cutting ability, IQ on the field, it's like something that's genuinely unmatched. I love guarding him every single time because I know that he's going to beat me a lot of times. And that's like, those are the matchups I really appreciate, where I have to go 100% in order to win that matchup.
So you are not in a 7th year situation, right? You've graduated, you're done.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately graduated. I will say the post-graduation national tournament was something that was just a huge blessing. Kind of thinking that your career is over, where your last like actual tournament is March of 2020, to having that like one last tournament to play with some of your best friends. That was just an amazing moment. And, even though we didn't have the result that we wanted, that experience and that time, I wouldn't trade for the world.
So what are you doing in the world now? Are you still living in Providence? Are you heading off somewhere?
I'm in New York.
Else? You're in New York.
I'm in New York.
Well, welcome.
We're in the working world, which is, honestly, they do not prepare you for it. College does not prepare you for it, but it's been a good last 6-7 months working, and the ability to work and play frisbee at the same time has been, just a blessing.
What type of work do you do? And does the Callahan buy you any currency there? Like, are you getting a little special treatment at work?
So okay, not super related. And by not super related, I mean completely unrelated. So I work in fintech. So at essentially a financial technologies firm that brings the fixed income trading realm into this is poorly said, but electronifies the fixed income secondary trading market. And so very different. However, when, my bosses, my coworkers, my friends saw that I was a Callahan nominee and then finalist and now winner, they give me huge applause. So it's I would say a little bit.
Are you playing club this summer, and with who? That's going to be a hot topic for my New York listeners right now.
Okay, so slight disclaimer. So after nationals, I had some injury management to do. So I was actually for a decent amount of time dealing with a couple of long-term injuries. And so I had a procedure done recently on my hip. So in terms of timeline, it's still kind of muddled, but hoping to get back to the game of Frisbee as soon as possible.
Charlie asked about club. I thought, Charlie, you were going to ask about his fall league plans. What are you doing for league?
Pop on that Manhattan Ultimate Disc League sign-up sheet. Sandbag, because people aren't going to know, but I will.
Now they're going to know. We just put it out there.
Sneaky 5th round pick. All right. Well, Azeez, thank you so much for coming on the show. Congratulations on winning the award. What's been your favorite part of this whole experience?
Favorite part? Honestly, just the reminiscing. Reminiscing on all of the good times, all of the hard times, when you have to practice in 10 degrees with 3 inches of snow. I have poor circulation as well, so like my fingers and toes like literally freeze. Reminiscing on all those times, the friendships, like those 4 years is just a time that you can't get back. And so like I really have spent the last couple of weeks thinking about all the good times, all the memories that were made, and all the people that helped me make them. Just because, I love them so much. And, the game of Frisbee, my teammates, my coaches, shout out to Jake, Tex, and Ned, and Mac at the time, for all helping me, because this is something I'll never be able to forget, something that I'll be able to tell my children. It's surreal.
Well, huge congratulations to you, and hope you heal up quick, and we see you on the field again very soon.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Azeez Adeyemi with us here on Deep Look. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Deep Look. Great to talk with Azeez and hear about his time playing at Brown. He just has such a warmth and infectious energy. Like how he was in this interview is exactly how I imagined, based on the way that he plays on the field, which I thought was very cool, Keith.
It is, to see somebody who like plays on the field with a lot of joy, also having that same kind of joy, just talking about the game is it's hard not to smile listening to that. But it's funny because he also is like kind of this defensive bulldog. It's like that there's some sort of incongruence there, but like I don't want to be covered by the guy, that's for sure. But like I'd be happy to hang out with him after he lay out block me, I guess.
All right. Well, congratulations again to Azeez. And as we look ahead now to the World Games tryouts for Team USA, got their first round in this past weekend in Austin. It was a little chilly. It was a little windy. Khalif El Salam had a very cool set of Instagram stories kind of documenting literally not only just his thoughts on the tryouts, but actual like in the huddle and on the field moments from the weekend. Just a great use of social media. He pinned them on his Instagram account, so you can go check that out and get some inside look into the event. Ultiworld's Chris Casella was also on hand on Sunday and wrote up a story about the weekend. So you can check that out on ultiworld.com. This is the first of 2 tryouts. They're going to cut from this group of around 70 down to 30 for a second tryout next month. And then, or maybe it's later in March, but about a month from now. And then they will cut down to the final group. Keith, I believe this year they're not going to be going to the 20-person roster and then cutting it down to 14 for the actual people who are going to play on the team. They're going to go straight to the 14. I think because people really didn't like making the 20 and then not actually making the team. And you can understand that.
It must have been so challenging to be in that position because you like want to root for the players, but you also like have this negative emotions around the team too. So tough spot. I think this is probably a better process. Also, the additional evaluation can't hurt for the coaching staff and the national team decision-making process. Man, that must be an intense practice though. A 30-person practice to make the World Games team. That's going to be something.
Yeah. I mean, just like the whole thing, right? Making the original tryout list is an honor. Making the second tryout is an incredible honor, right? That's like making it's like if the USA had a club team, you made the club team, right? You made the one club team.
I mean, we talked about it in our subscriber only segment where we projected our picks where we did our picks for the team. Like we talked about doing a second team once the roster comes out. Well, we basically they're doing it for us. They are picking a second 14 more or less, plus a couple extras, some alternates.
So we'll see. I don't know if they're going to release that tryout list publicly, but hopefully we get to see that. I would think that they are. They typically do that, announce tryouts. So we'll see. Expecting to hear some more from the coaches sometime in the next week or two. So exciting to see which players move on to the next round as we get ready for the World Games coming up this summer in Birmingham, Alabama. Someone should, make the trek, right? This is your chance to watch the world's best ultimate up close and personal in the heat of the summer in Alabama. But I think it could be pretty fun to like take a little trip out to Alabama, enjoy some time, and watch the world's best ultimate players right there.
Eat some good food. Birmingham's got some good food, some good history. There's some nice beaches in South Alabama. So, there are things to do while you're out there and a culture to enjoy. That's for sure.
It's set to be the first big international ultimate for 2 years plus.
When I think about the World Games, I think about the Columbia and the massive crowds that were out for
Cali,
ultimate there. But I don't expect that to be the case here. But I'm very curious what attendance will be like from the non-ultimate community and how they will engage with this in a place like Birmingham.
All right, so let's get ready for this weekend's college ultimate action. It's a big weekend. We got a lot going on. The highlight tournaments this weekend, the Smoky Mountain Invite in Tennessee, Stanford Invite out in Stevenson, California. And we've also got the big D3 tournament at the beginning of the month, and that's the D3 FCS tune-up in North Carolina. So maybe we'll start with Stanford, Keith. I mean, this is the best women's field of the year until nationals. So particularly with Northwest Challenge sounding like maybe it's not going to be happening this season, this is the one. And we've got some of the best teams from the East Coast heading out to California to play in the event. And so let's take a look at it, Keith. Give us a little breakdown here.
Well, we get the debut of Washington Like that is, to me, we're getting Washington and Carleton both playing for the first time. So those are the things that we really want to see, at least for me. And they're going to get a real test. We've got Santa Barbara, who's been the class of the Southwest so far, working on trying to win their the third leg of the Southwest Triple Crown Tour. Those are 3 of the 4 top-seeded teams in the 4 pools. Tufts is the final one. But, pretty deep field. In the second line, you have San Diego, Davis, Colorado, BYU. So this is going to be a pretty solid tournament. Not a lot of pushover competition. I'm very curious, though, to see what these teams that we haven't seen yet, and all of whom have good teams in their pool, good teams to cut their teeth on. I'm very curious to see how they perform in these conditions. We also have Texas making their debut. They have Tufts and UC San Diego in their pool. So those are the teams that I'm keeping my eye on, because I want to know what they look like in 2022.
Yeah, and I think, Washington's certainly going to be the favorite here, but it's not, there's enough good teams in attendance here that I'm really interested to see how it shakes out. And I keep wanting to know more about how the Southwest stacks up with out of region teams. I feel like they certainly passed the test at the President's Day Invite, but this is the real test now. How does UCSB stack up against teams like Washington and Carleton? That's going to give us kind of a pecking order, I think, and clarity in the power rankings as we head towards nationals. So should be really good. And, Colorado was a team that was very impressive for stretches at Pres Day and ended up not even making it to the semis, mostly because of the format. They lost to Davis. So they get a shot at UCSB in Pool B, and in a tough pool with Western Washington and Stanford. So how do they stack up in their second tournament? Can they make a push towards semis or even the final? Really curious to see about Colorado.
I've been disappointed by this Colorado team before, so I'm trying not to get too excited. But I just look at the roster and I see a really strong team. So I want to buy the stock. Give me something to get excited about, Quandary. Let's do it. I'm ready to buy. I just need one sign.
And then of course we've also got Tufts and BYU's back in the field. This is just a deep stacked.
Those 2 teams are Queen City tune-up teams. So those are your connectivity teams. Those are the teams you're going to be looking at to compare. How do these teams on the East Coast stack up with the teams on the western side of the country?
BYU really giving us lots of connectivity after they went to SBI as well. So, look, I think, my expectation is that we see Washington and Carleton in the final, but I'm not counting UCSB out. That's for sure.
You don't think that having already played 2 tournaments could be to the advantage of this Santa Barbara team?
I definitely think it's an advantage. Sure. I just think that's how good Carleton is.
Wow. Big statements. Well, when we get to, are we doing picks now? Are we in the pick section, or are we got to get to the pick section?
Let's make the picks right now for Stanford.
Whoa. We're getting crazy out here. So you're picking Washington Carleton in the final? Is that your?
I'm taking Washington to win, and yeah, give me Carleton in the final.
I'll take Washington over UC Santa Barbara.
Okay, there it is. Colorado's gonna snipe us both.
I'll be happy to see it.
The men's division is not as dominant as it's been in years past. A lot of teams that typically used to go to Stanford are going to Smoky Mountain this year. So still good, but it's definitely heavy on the West Coast teams and just not as deep as in years past. But your top seeds are Washington, who will be making their season debut, Cal, Tufts, Oregon, and then you get down to there's some matching of different regions. So UC Santa Cruz in there with Oregon. Florida is coming out. That it's interesting to see them heading out to Stanford. Tulane also making their debut. That'll be a good game against Cal in Pool X, they're calling it. So those are your top seeded teams. You also got UT Dallas, a team that's been on that bubble for nationals for a few years. Stanford, Whitman coming out. And then it gets a little thinner at the bottom. But I think the big question, Keith, is how good is this Washington team? They kind of underperformed at fall nationals. Are they going to bounce back and really look strong? I think it's possible. They've got a great roster.
It's hard not to be enthused by the roster that this team can put together. I mean, there's a lot of talent on this team. They've been cultivating young talent for years. They've been able to bring in some high quality grad students. I don't know what's going on in the Washington graduate program as it pertains to Ultimate, but maybe they just have the best grad school in the country, because I feel like people just keep popping up there every year in either division. So Seattle marketing, whatever's happening is good. They should be a pretty strong team, and I think a pretty heavy favorite over the field, even though we've been impressed by what we've seen from Cal early on in the year.
And then the question, how good is Tufts? I mean, they're in a very tough New England region with a lot of good teams. Are they going to show up and also look good? Are we going to be feeling like the New England should be getting 4 bids? We might after this
5.
weekend. Yeah, seriously. So, we'll see. I think they have a pool that feels very winnable with Florida, Stanford, and Western Washington. But those are not pushover games. Florida's pretty good. They need to be prepared for the deep game. Stanford is a solid team. And so if they can get through that, and they can get through probably a quarterfinal against, I think, would be Tulane, then, can they beat Cal in semis? I mean, it doesn't feel impossible for them to make the final. But from what we've seen from Cal, I've been impressed. I don't think that I'm going to take Tufts to beat them. I do have Washington over Cal in the final. Those are my picks. Lock them in. But I'm going to be keeping a close eye on Tufts.
I will reveal that I have the same picks. I'll take Washington over Cal. I don't really have another way to get around that. I'm not even sure. I'm a tough skeptic right now. I would not be surprised if Florida wins that pool. I wouldn't be surprised.
Florida's pretty good,
and they've had some chances to get some run in that Tufts might not be able to match up with. We've had differing opinions, I feel like, on Tulane going into this year, so they're a team that I really want to get a chance to see. And we know Dallas and Santa Clara have some competence, so there'll be a nice test for Tulane, and then they get a much more difficult challenge, I think, in the likes of Cal. So Tulane's going to get a chance to see what they're made of. Test their mettle, and I expect them to do pretty solidly. I was impressed with what we saw from them at Nationals. They seemed very confident that they are more than just kind of a flash in the pan. They have some really good returning talent, even though they lost some experienced veterans. That's probably going to have them take a step back, perhaps. But I still think they could be a good team, even taking a step back from where they were last fall.
Well, the bigger action in the men's division this weekend is out in Tennessee at the Smoky Mountain Invite. Second time we've seen this tournament run. And it's pretty stacked, Keith. We've got UNC, Georgia, Brown, Colorado, Minnesota, Texas, Pittsburgh, and UMass as your top 8 seeds. You got to go all the way down to 9 to get to Carleton. Okay? So this tournament has pulled some of the talent away from the Stanford Invite. And it thins out a little bit towards the bottom, but even the teams towards the bottom, like the 15 seed of this tournament is UCLA. And UCLA is a pretty good team that had a really nice tournament at Santa Barbara and could sure use a bounce back weekend here at Smoky Mountain. Obviously, UNC will be the favorite to win here, but we finally get to see the big guns all face off. I mean, we're talking about a lot of teams at the top of the power rankings going head to head this weekend. It's, as good as Easterns.
This could be the strongest tournament field that we see in either division all season. That wouldn't surprise me at all. You got 11 out of the 16 teams are in our top 25, and a couple of these are kind of like borderline teams.
All of the top 4 and 7 of the top 10.
Yeah. So, we get the Carleton debut. Nobody has any idea what to make of this team, though. So, they've been in our top 25, but who knows what's going to happen? Could you imagine a world with Carleton not in the top 25? Like, I can't, but I guess it could be one that we're in. Who knows? They also could be a top 10 team. I don't know. Like their debut is definitely one to watch, of course. Are there other teams here that catch your eye that you're very curious about? I know I can think of one that I think you might pick next, actually, now that I think about it.
Well, I'm definitely interested to see how Texas looks.
Okay.
Because we know the top 4 teams are going to be really good. UNC, Georgia, Brown, and Colorado. Okay, mm-hmm. Colorado won Pres Day. Georgia has been the best team on the, I don't know if you want to say the best or not, but one of the best teams on the East Coast behind UNC. Brown won warm-up. Georgia's only loss has come to UNC. And it was 13-11. So it was a close game. And, then, so you have two teams, really. It's those next two teams that are inside the top 10. Really, you could go all of the 2 seeds, if I'm being honest. Minnesota, Texas, Pittsburgh, and UMass. Which of those 4 teams comes out of this tournament looking like a legitimate contender, and which of them fall back behind this big 4 at the top, those top 4 seeds? I find that a very compelling question to ask. UMass gets an incomplete at warm-up. They won all their games, but they didn't really have to play anybody very good, and then they left early because they booked early flights.
Do we know when their flights are for this tournament? Because the final, so the championship match begins at 12:30. So do they have the 1 o'clock flights?
Actually, they have Saturday 10 a.m. flights. They're actually going to just miss the whole tournament. It was cheapest to fly back Saturday morning, so that's what they went with. But so they get an incomplete. Pittsburgh looked good at warm up, but they also took some tough losses. They got smacked by BYU, and then they lost clearly to Brown. I mean, it wasn't a blowout, but Brown was the better team. Then you got Texas, they're debuting, and then we got Minnesota, who got a win over Brown at warm up. But it was in the very first game of the year, first round of the first tournament of the season for both teams. Have they developed their defense? That's going to be the big thing I'm looking for. Their offense looked very good at warm-up, but they could not apply pressure to teams at all. If they can step up and make their way, get a win over one of those teams, I mean, they'll have a great chance in their pool play matchup against Colorado. I mean, Colorado's really good. I don't expect Minnesota to win that game, but it would be a statement win for Minnesota to get it.
You surprised me, Charlie. I thought you were going to zero right in on this UMass team. I mean, I know everybody was showing love for their performance at Florida warm-up sans some of their top players, but now we get the Orion Cable shows. We get the first episode, see what season 1 looks like, what the pilot episode looks like, because the guy could be scary. UMass obviously could be really good if he's on and the rest of the team is playing like they were at warm-up. That's definitely something I'm looking for. And then I'm wondering if we're going to be pushing the panic button on Ohio State and NC State. They've had some pretty underwhelming results right now. So those are teams I'm also watching, because if they come out here and lay another egg, we might have to push the big red button on one or both.
I mean, I fully expect both of those teams to lose at least 2 games of pool play. But that's a testament to the strength of the field, not so much to them being weak teams. But I mean, it's true that both teams have fallen from their initial positions in the power rankings and are looking like a little shaky in the foundations right now.
Yeah.
All right, Keith, picks. Who you got?
Ooh, tough picks here. Tough picks. Oh, I want to find a way to go away from the chalk. I want to find a way to take Brown over Georgia. Georgia had some real inconsistencies at Queen City tune-up, but man, when Hayden Austin Nabb started to take over the game, you're like, wow, that's something. That was something to watch. I just don't know if I could take Brown over Georgia. I mean, I'm taking UNC to win the thing. I'm not going to make it complicated. All right, I'm taking Brown over Georgia because it's more fun. We're going to have fun. I'm taking Brown over Georgia, so UNC over Brown.
You stole my thunder. I thought you were going to take Georgia. I like the pick. I'm taking it too. I think Brown is going to get the upset here. I think Georgia is probably the better team when we get to nationals, but Brown was very impressive. Also depends a little bit on John Randolph's health.
Yeah.
Is he back?
Yes.
If he's back at 100%, I think it's possible Brown is the better team. I think that is possible. If Randolph's not playing, even still, I was impressed by Brown. And, they won warm-up without Randolph for most of the weekend. But, Georgia would be the toughest team that they've faced yet this season. And so I'm doing it, though. I think I agree with you. I think it's going to be UNC over Brown in the final.
We got a lot of same picks going to
We
this
should have
weekend.
asked Azeez to make picks.
I'm thinking he would have
taken.
taken Brown.
I think he would have too. I think he would have too. Maybe even he would have picked UNC though.
That's how powerful they are.
All right, so those tournaments as well as D3 FCS tune-up coming up this weekend. We've got video footage coming from all of them.
Don't forget about Philly Special, where the Yukon Rise will be taking the field. Although we won't be having film of that team or of that tournament, unfortunately.
But Keith, best of luck.
Thank you.
Is this your first tournament of the season?
Yes. We had like a 1 day 2 game thing on Sunday. So I treat that more like scrimmages, but this will be our first tournament.
Fantastic. Well, seriously, good luck. Got to get into the power rankings. This is step one.
If we were to bagel every team, do you think we'd get in the power rankings?
Possibly, yes.
If you go to a tournament and you bagel set for 7 straight games, like I think you might get it.
That's like when UCF went 13-0 in college football. You gotta sub for bageling.
Wow.
So you gotta play the same 7 players the whole weekend.
I wonder if I can get buy-in from the team on that. Like look, I know we talked about our goals, but like let's gun for top 25 in the power rankings.
But yeah, we'll have video footage at Stanford. We're filming 2 games around out at Stanford. We've also got video coming from Smoky Mountain and D3 FCS tune-up. So you got to make sure you get your subscription. Full and plus subscribers get access to all of our game footage, and you can get a college team pack as well. Get footage for your entire team and coaching staff for one low price. Subscriptions for everybody as well. So you can find out more information at ultiworld.com/subscribe. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. For Keith Raynor, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying, check out our subscriber bonus segment where we talk about the worst. We talk about the worst things that can happen to you on an ultimate field. We try to rank them. So we're doing something a little different and a little silly, but we hope you'll join us for that. And again, he's Keith Raynor. I'm Charlie Eisenhood, and we're saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.